And we are on. Yes, yeah, we are there. So thank you very much. Of course, I thanked you. Seems scripted. I won't do it. So we were discussing before I started this that David has done excellent work in terms of the traditional and how do we strengthen that. So David was telling us something. I cut you off. Please, David. But you'll have to go back. You'll have to repeat a little bit. Please.
Okay, hi everybody, and thank you, Vikram, for this opportunity. Yeah, I was working with a group of immigrants to Israel from Uzbekistan, especially from Bukhara and Samarkand and Tashkent, and they came with their own mechanisms of conflict resolution, with their own list of dignitaries who performed conflict resolution. And I was trying to introduce modern mediation and modern mediation thinking into their community. And when I was investigating, first of all, I understood that they have their own patterns of dealing with conflicts. By the way, they also have their own specific reasons why conflicts erupt. And they're quite different than the ones that we are accustomed to deal with in our mediation rooms. And I found that there are three basic strategies of how to introduce mediation to traditional societies. The first is mediation, conflict is conflict. We have a very good model. It was built and constructed at the Harvard University. And we separate the people from the problem, and we separate positions from interest, and it works. So that was one approach. The second approach was culture-sensitive mediation, which means we have our system. It was developed in the Harvard University. We separate the people from the problem. We separate positions from interest, etc. But we have to be sensitive, and we maybe should inquire: are we allowed to shake hands with the women? And maybe there's a specific dress code that we have to be aware of, or maybe some expressions that we shouldn't say. And the third approach was to take the indigenous leaders and teach them mediation, and take them through a modern, Western, interest-based mediation course. And I found that there are difficulties with all of these approaches. And I wanted to maintain my abilities as a modern mediator, but I wanted to maintain the natural leaders and conflict resolvers of these societies. So I came up with a concept that I call the hybrid mediation, in which a modern mediator co-mediates with a local, a indigenous, a traditional leader and conflict resolver. And I tested it a few times, and I did it with within that community, and it works beautifully. And every one of the mediators brings something special and specific into this cooking pot. When I bring the know-how of how to conduct a mediation session, how to ask questions, how to rephrase, how to reframe, how to identify interests, how to identify issues. And the traditional leader will come with the respect that the community shows towards him, and that way also towards the mediation. And he knows the way of life of the community, and he knows how to express himself, and he knows how to get the confidence of the parties. And we found out that if we work together, if we are coordinated, if we respect each other, we have a fantastic model of co-mediation, which maintains the traditional system and the social order, which is very important to some of them, and especially to the leaders. And it also enables me to introduce modern thinking, win-win thinking, free decision thinking. And when we do it together, I think we have a beautiful way of solving problems and introducing mediation to traditional societies.
But David, only thing that comes out from that is every time you mention the traditional thing, you said he. Is there a she there, or is it only a he?
Uh, in many societies, it's a he. In many societies, the she has a very important role, but she's behind the curtains, behind the veil sometimes. Uh, Specifically, the community I worked with, the Jews who came from Bukhara, who came from Uzbekistan, there are a few women who are conflict resolvers, who people come to them and ask their advice. Most of them are very, very wealthy women. And sometimes wealthy people, when they intervene, they also offer money to solve a problem. You know, oh, it's $200. Maybe I'll give you $200 and let's make peace. Okay. So yes, in many traditional societies, the women are behind the curtain, behind the veil. But in the specific society that I researched, there are women who are the main figure in the mediation room.
Because I tell you, when I was talking about James doing excellent work in East Africa, he said one of the issues was that the people could not accept a woman as a mediator, because a woman can't even, I mean, no one is going to, in that kind of a situation, be sitting there looking up at a woman kind of thing in that the structure that is there. So he's working on sensitizing them on that. But one thing that Kathy and I were discussing before you came in was that box, that modern that you said. Now, what that modern is, I think we need to also discuss that modern. And Kathy obviously will have some view on the modern. Kathy, would you want to put across the issues with modern and how do we relook at modern?
So I guess the word I picked up on in your comments, David, was social construct or social context.
Social order.
Social order, yes, yes. And so I guess that's the question that came to mind, is that how do we get creative about helping to cultures to sustain themselves and their thinking and their languages, and yet sometimes get creative about conflicts, and often they are around women and how women are treated in many cultures. So it's interesting what you say. So I don't have any answers. I'm just curious about how this works, and sort of the role of the hybrid. In indigenous communities, for example, many of them are matriarchal cultures, and the women are leading the negotiations at the table. But of course, they've been subjected to the Western Canadian model, where men predominate.
I think maybe looking at another community of immigrants to Israel, which is about 140,000 Jews who came from Ethiopia. And it's relatively a new immigration. They started arriving in mass in the 80s. And there, of course, the men are the ones who call the shots, and they are in charge and they make the decisions. And I think we made a terrible mistake when we started to empower the women before we empowered the men. Okay, I think to lead a change, you have to use the local traditional leaders and help them make the change. Don't go against them. Don't undermine them. Don't keep them in the dark and take the women and tell them about their rights and empowerments. Let the men do that. So you have to, I think you have to adapt to the society that you're working in. Don't try to break it. Try to use its natural mechanisms to introduce the changes you want. Now, in many traditional societies, they're not necessarily democratic societies. And when they immigrate to democratic countries, we have to gradually introduce them to democracy. And modern mediation is democratic. modern mediation talks about self-expression, self-determination, and and it's not a collectivistic view of society. It's individualistic, and I think we have to do it through the natural leaders, through the rabbis, through the chiefs, through the imams. That's the way we can, I think, smoothen the integration of these people. But still, I am. To me, it's very important not to make them lose their traditions, their customs, their special food, their special dances, their special music. I think we have to find a way to allow them to maintain the rituals, to maintain their specific holidays, but meanwhile, to introduce them to the country that they immigrated to and to its values, but to do it gradually and to do it through the natural leaders. In many societies, that means start working with the men, not with the women.
But the only thing,
And
David,
I think that's a really good point. But I guess the other thing is that it's also important to look at what is it that the women are doing in that society, because maybe there's an entry point there for those women to help the men to understand what the new society is about. Food is a perfect example. One of the things that happens when people immigrate to a new country, they don't have access to their traditional foods anymore, and there's a role, that an important role that food plays in culture as well, and often it's women who are responsible for that role. So I think it's amazing and interesting work that you're doing. I absolutely agree that you have to go to the existing power in that culture and community and get those people to help lead the change. So excellent
Kathy,
work. Thank you.
No, but Kathy, you're not just going to say that. You're also going to tell him your views on the modern mediation, and we have to look at modern mediation also in a larger perspective. Like your concept of using art in mediation is also part of the modern mediation. So I think we have to open our minds to even that modern mediation. Let's open our minds, have discussions on that. So please give your views on that also. That the box that we have, that box needs to be changed or enlarged, or what has to happen, please.
Sure. Well, in some ways, my questioning around this began with the idea that so much of mediation is about talking heads. We're using language, we're using words, and there's different understanding to those words. There's a different cultural context to those words, and so I have found that art, in fact, has been probably a part of mediation for many years as well, and we're losing sight of that in our modern mediation structures that came out of Howard Rafa and folks at Harvard there. Excellent decision theorists, but not so strong on the cultural side. So modern mediation has to look beyond itself, and that your work can help draw in some of those other aspects of cultures. I can remember working with a Latin American community many years ago, and one of the key takeaways for me there was no decision will ever be made without food on the table, period. So these are elements that often we miss when we go to these structured frameworks of modern mediation. We don't invite people to draw what the conflict looks like. We don't invite there are some people in different African nations, women in particular, who are using poetry and spoken word poetry as a powerful tool to help individuals transform their perspectives, transform their relationships with their culture, and yet at the same time, how important it is to maintain your culture. That's part of who you are. We don't want to lose those differences among us either. Is
But
that where you wanted me to go?
yes, exactly. And further and further. But actually, what interesting thing about food you said, look, for me, it's been 93 people I've heard, so I won't be able to tell you who said that. But there was some particular culture where they said they sit together, they just eat and everything. The dispute is not spoken about. All
That
that
was the
happens.
fellow from Romania.
Yeah, Kristen is doing
Yeah,
interesting work
yeah.
there. So that's what I'm saying. There are all these things happening, which I mean, look. Let's not also disregard the fact that the traditional methods, which you also said, the traditional methods have things in them, and to just say modern, I think, is maybe not the correct way. We just have to either say ideal. Is it going to be ideal? I don't know. Some word. I mean, I'm not the best maybe at putting out words. You people read. You have lots of your vocabulary is better, but let's call it something else. Let's not call it modern. What do we call it?
Well, Fisher and Urey call it interest-based, in
Let's go larger
their
than that. Let's
book.
go larger. Let's go larger than that, Kathy. Let's not just keep it there. Let's give it some nice name, which is
What?
acceptable.
You be creative. You name it, Vikram.
I told you your vocabulary is going to be better. My vocabulary is limited. So
Mediation on the golf course.
yes, that's the one. That's the one. That's the only way I can do it. So, but now the thing is that Giovanni can come in, or otherwise during the whole symposium, what has happened is I've controlled his situation. I have kept him muted and I've asked him to put his questions and comments in the chat because obviously there's so much he wants to tell us. The only thing is that because the session is short, everyone's session is 1 hour. So because he wants to, part of the question is also a comment. But now, Giovanni, you can say what you want. It is open. This is open. Please. You can unmute yourself. This is now control is gone. Now you can control these things. All that control is gone. Yes, Giovanni. What has happened? Now when you get the option, what? No.
You're on mute.
You're muted. Yeah.
Well,
Hi.
Hi, Katie. Hi, David. Listen to you. Just I was asking myself, what is the situation in Italy? How what you told is useful also for Italy. So different questions, because in Israel, for example, you have a lot of people coming just from specific areas. We in Italy are just a jumble with people from different cultures, but fortunately we have just the same religion. And this is very important. We do not have racial disputes. We don't have religion disputes. Now we are people coming from mainly from North Asia or from some parts of Asia. Are we using mediation just to integrate these people? Basically, some people use mediation without knowing what is it. But we are trying to integrate them, those people, just through economic means, just integrate them in our working system. In Italy, mediation is used mainly because of the huge backlog in courts. And so up to now, it is not a specific cultural dimension. What's happening here is just a pragmatic tools, a pragmatic way of escaping the problem of the backlog in the course. And just listening to what David is telling, also he wrote, we met, we spoke all together, and the approach is very different, of course. Well, this means that mediation is a very feasible matter, a matter who can be used in many different situations and many different ways. Now we are approaching the practical, the economic, the commercial way of handling with these means. Mainly the lawyer's culture, our lawyer's tradition of managing conflicts in the courts, in the tribunals. Up to now, we have no experience of how to use these means with people from other culture. We have culture mediation. It is taught very little in some universities, but it's not very well spread.
But what we were also discussing before you came in, Giovanni, with part of Kathy's session, I was saying that because, of course, there were smaller communities earlier and they had their method of dispute resolution. Do we go back to smaller communities and start relooking the way society is structured? Because obviously urbanization has created its own issues. So, I mean, there has to be some way that we have to bring out the connection between people. And then you get into dispute resolution between them. So what, anything on that? I mean, because I was just telling her about Mahatma Gandhi writing a lot of, I mean, a book that I have, but otherwise also on self-sufficient villages. So he had this concept that villages should be self-sufficient and that community should be, I mean, of course, this was before social media. So definitely it can be at all stop that aspect of their own thought. First of all, being a closed community, that is the thought also a closed thought. So that definitely might not happen. So I'm just saying, how do I'm just talking aloud. I mean, thinking aloud. I mean, I'm not saying that there is a solution that I have in mind, but I just feel that starting at the community point, do we need to look at that differently? So, Kathy, anything on that? Of course, we were discussing it, but
Thanks, Giovanni. Interesting to hear. My nephew lives in Italy. So I have some understanding of what's going on there. And I think what you're talking about in terms of the evolution of mediation is very interesting and, similar to what David's talking about. How do we evolve this centuries old practice in some ways of bringing in somebody to bring parties together to create some shared understanding of the problem. I'm not sure, Vikram, if we can go to the tribal approach, because what Giovanni's talking about is the in-migration, and David's talking about the in-migration. We have it here in Canada, caused in part by climate change. People are moving all over the place. And now we're not living in little tribal communities. We're living in multicultural communities where different cultures and histories begin to clash, and the people who figure they've been there the longest feel like they have the authority over the people who are coming in, and it's a challenge for sure.
Yes.
So
Yes, but you have a lot of space. You are not overcrowded on the same land. And so I think that the contrast is smoother because you have more space where to live.
in Canada, you mean?
People coming from outside, different cultures. Well, in Canada, you got many different cultures, of course, but you got a lot of land. And it creates, I think it creates many problems that can be in Italy or in Israel, where the boundaries of the states are much narrower. If you can breathe near to other people, there is no much problem. But the situation, but you are in a crowded room, well, problems arise, of course. And so I think I do not know Canada situation, so I cannot speak, I'm just listening. But I think that you got a good chance, just having all this land, all these lakes, all these places where it's possible for you to go. It's not the same in Italy, of course.
But Kathy, where I was coming from, what I was trying to put across was that let's just look at it from the perspective of people living. I'm not saying, there's not a homogeneous community, it's a mixed community. But the fact is that being smaller, there is a sense of ownership towards the community. Today, that's what I see, that the sense of ownership is gone. Because Andrew Lee was from China. He's based in Australia, but talking about the Chinese experience, that you don't even know your neighbor. You live one door away, but you don't know them. So that when does a community start moving away from this? When do they start getting into themselves? When does that sense of ownership go away? Let's see in terms of numbers, is it number of people. So let's look at communities only that size, where beyond that, those issues start coming up. When do they stop having a person they trust within the community? I think that might be some way that you can then structure the way people live together in that optimum size. That okay, beyond 3,000, these issues start. Beyond this happens. Maybe, I mean, it's an experiment in people living together. But I mean, just thoughts on that. I mean, look, this is a session on thoughts. It's not it's
Well,
not answers maybe, but thoughts.
sure, I agree. So I think one of the things is it's not about size. It's about a shared problem, a shared issue to be addressed, and as that issue gets more problematic, let's say, then people may be more inclined to come together to resolve that issue and to put their other differences aside. I don't know. That's a different answer, perhaps. To the size is one. Focus on a particular issue. It's interesting, Giovanni, what you talk about in terms of land, because what I was talking about earlier with Vikram, and I think the same is true in Italy, in Israel, I mean, is this conversation about land and the ownership of land and the control over land that is a requirement of many geopolitical boundaries, and that conflicts arise out of the need, want, whatever you want to call it, to own land, to control the land's resources, and as a result, conflicts reside. Canada might be a big country, but most of the population lives in a very narrow border just north of the United States. So we don't inhabit most of the geographic area that is Canada. And much of the land is owned either privately by capital or publicly, which isn't really public, by the government. So that's another conversation for another day.
But what else? I mean, I don't know how many sessions you people have been able to watch. I think Giovanni has, of course, attended a lot of them. David has come in for a lot of them. Anything that you have brought, what has come out for you in terms of commonalities? Something, David? Is there anything that you've seen?
Yeah, I think there were a few things that are of your interest, Vikram, and some that were of Giovanni's interest. When I'm talking about Giovanni's interest, it's the way the lawyers are dominating mediation, and the way the legal thinking is dominating mediation, and the way that many lawyers and retired judges will view mediation as kind of a threat on their well-being and on their making a fortune. So that's one thing that I noticed throughout the sessions that I attended. And the second is the many similarities between the traditional conflict resolution mechanisms in so many countries and in so many cultures. Every one of the speakers came as if he has a revelation. We take 3 elders and they sit together and they smoke and they discuss, and eventually I hear it in Romania and in Africa and in South America and all over. And it was fascinating to see that in many traditional societies, the way of solving disputes is very similar. It's very much the same. I think when I spoke in my session, I tried to make a distinction between cultures that I call them cultures of honor and cultures of faith. And we saw that in the presentations. We saw the people from Asia talking about faith, talking about harmony, talking about maintaining relationships, talking about subduing their emotions, not expressing their emotions, remaining very calm. And we heard of the honor culture, where people are very expressive. Their immediate reaction to conflict is to seek revenge, is to, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And the mechanisms of solving these disputes, in a way, they're very similar. They use the traditional leaders and the elders, and nowadays the local politicians, and of course the millionaires. But it was fascinating for me to see that we're dealing with very, very similar mechanisms all over the world, and everyone sees his own as a unique way of solving a conflict. That was fascinating. That was, I think, to me, one of the big contributions of this amazing, amazing symposium of over 80, I think, speakers
No,
from so many.
Kathy was 93.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Well,
Kathy,
let's
can you
just-
say something about the art and mediation? Because I missed it.
Yeah, just 1 second. Before that, Olusola is here. Olusola, you want to say hi to everyone? Olusola is in Nigeria. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
David thought that he was impressed by the similarities of conflict and solution just all around the world that we heard during these sessions. Why? First of all, because conflicts are the same all over the world.
Mm.
And therefore, there could be similar ways of solving them. I was impressed yesterday just listening to Andy Ole from China that told that now something changing in China. If they live in high skyscrapers with 30 floors, with a lot of people that they do not know each other, it's possible to go back to the old cultural traditional way of solving conflicts in China because situational thinking, they are understanding their own rights. It was really impressive because up to now I heard that in China, the mediation is very different from the Western way of handling it. And just listen to Heather yesterday, conflicts are the same, but it depends from the situation, where they arise and where they're managed, how they're managed. So it will be easier to understand mediation as it is in its roots, how it can develop. But as I'm stressing, as underlying from some years, first of all, we must know the other situation, the other country's situation, the other country's problem, therefore to try to understand which kind of mediation we can use better to solve this kind of conflicts. So first of all, knowledge of the situation of the culture. Later on, we can use mediation.
But still, I would still want Olusola to come in. She has not said hi to us, which is not correct, Olusola. Please say something. We should know you're there. Okay, seems to be some mic issue. Not a problem. But like, I think this is interesting that what David is saying, that everyone thinks that their situation is unique, but we find out that things have developed the same everywhere. In traditional societies, everything is similar. So which means that there is hope that there is a solution also, which is, of course, look, I will still say that the colonization, the effects of colonization, we have to discuss to undo it. So we should not just say that it is just colonization which has done it. What has, because if maybe we just don't even talk about the people. Why did they do it? I mean, there were people who were implementing what they were implementing. If there were issues with the indigenous communities in Canada or everywhere else, it was because there were people who were doing it. So I mean, of course, this is a dispute resolution discussion, not a sociological discussion, but thoughts on that, I think, should also be put across, because I feel the solutions lie in us understanding the people behind it. And if you have to undo that whole psyche and everything that is involved with it, also needs to come out. I don't know. I mean, what would you say, Kathy?
But
Well, I think, oh, go ahead, Giovanni, go, please.
No, please, Kathy, please.
I guess what I was going to say, and I'd be curious to hear other people's perspective, is that you know, and your points around cultural differences is really well taken, David. But I think we also have to say, within that cultural context, how willing are people to be accountable for their own behavior? How willing are people to be reflective about their own behavior and to bring that real honesty to the table? And yet at the same time, knowing that there are cultural boundaries around expectations of who we are and how we behave in society. So, you know, if we're willing to get to an existential level, uh, you know, to a psychological, social, cultural level, then perhaps we can begin to answer some of these questions. But if we go to the Western legal system, and I think this is what you're talking about, Giovanni, as well, is that when the mediation is based on the Western legal system, it already limits what the opportunities are for a mediated resolution to that problem. It's got an inherent bias that I think we have to talk about.
Well, I was one thing that I want to again. I always
Well,
come
Giovanni
back
was
to
going
that.
to say something
No,
first.
after me.
Vikram.
After me, Giovanni always speaks after me. But Giovanni once said, what I want to put across is that maybe we are trying to put across people in a manner they actually want to live together and want to resolve the disputes. Maybe people just want to be locked in their apartments and watch Netflix, and we're asking for too much from them to come into a community. Maybe I'm going wrong there. Is there a concept of a community? Do they really want to be part of it? I don't know. That means also a thought. Yes, Giovanni, please.
Another very interesting thing that I heard just yesterday from by Liliana from Argentina.
Oh, Liliana, yeah.
Why people prefer to go to court instead of solving problems by themselves. Enlightenment is a man's emergence from his self-imposed knowledge. Knowledge is the inability to use one's own understanding without another's guidance. This knowledge is self-imposed if its cause lies not in lack of understanding, but in indecision and lack of courage to use one's own mind without another guidance. Dare to know, have the courage to use your own understanding is therefore the motto of the Enlightenment. Well, this fear not to behave, not to decide by ourselves, just to manage the problem by ourselves, we need just to be helped by another people, by another person. And this is to resort to the judge, to resort to the lawyers, and not to your own decision. I think that this is really the basis of the contents of the conflict, how we are not able to solve them in a simple way. That's all.
Yes. I agree 100%, Giovanni. I think that's, and I know Liliana's work is very powerful. And I think I'm saying the same thing with slightly different words, that we've become a society that relies on other people to solve our problems for us. And I was saying to Vikram earlier, it's like when he was saying, how are we going to fix this? It's like, well, we need to allow our children to continue to develop their creative ways of thinking and their creative minds. We need to give them space to become philosophers and mediators at a young age, rather than to impose on them a system. And yeah, it's not the only solution, but I think you're right. We've lost in many cultures around the world, through power and control and greed, perhaps, the permission to be the full human beings that we are, that we have the potential to bring ourselves to that conflict. Mediation requires people to do that.
I just want people to have a sense of ownership towards communities. That I think has gone totally. And now will that community be online community now? The physical community concept has gone. Has it gone? So are you going to have a sense of ownership towards the larger community that you're part of, which social media is just a vehicle for that? You create that community. Do you have a sense of ownership towards that, or is it just a place to write a comment and just walk off, or is it to bring people, the right people together? And because that's what I am doing. I mean, using the same technology that everyone has, but I'm not, my social media posts are not about anything but the work that I do to get people together. So maybe all of, because look, the whole idea was to put together a symposium with so many people single-handedly, was that everyone can do it. So if 100 people are here and those 100 people do the similar thing, at least we have 10,000 people, those conversations happening, which is what I want. I mean, YouTube channel is not a difficult thing to set up. Social media posts anyone can put out. There's nothing unique that I do. Everyone can do that. But this is the whole idea, which I think maybe people are not carrying forward, which I don't see that happening. Well, it's the same network of people. Everyone connects with the same people. We have to open out to so many people sitting there doing such interesting work on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I also would not know, but when it comes out, that's when we'll get to know. I mean, how did I get to know about James? Because someone told me about him. So it's just that those conversations, if they happen and we find out all these good things happening and people are finding solutions, how do we know that how would we know what David is doing? Because someone told me about David. So someone told me about Giovanni. So Giovanni came in, David came in. Someone told me about you. So it's just a matter of getting those people together and those conversations going. So that's another point that I want to put across. Please do these things. Please get those people together and have those conversations. I'll keep saying this. Any point of time someone watches what I do, I hope someone does watch what I say, but at least I just want to keep putting this across, that please, if I don't say duplicate because you'll do it better, but at least do this is very simple to do with the technology that we have on our hand.
Yes, yes. Vikram, I have to thank you so much for the work that you do, and also others on the call today. It is important work. Thank you so much. And I live in a shared space, so it's bedtime here. So I'm going to sign off.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kathy, for
We'll
coming
see you
in.
again soon.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right, bye.
Okay.
So Olisila still hasn't come in. Olisila, what happened?
No, I think it was something to do with the network.
Okay, now it's okay.
I think
Now
it's
okay.
better now.
So have you met Giovanni and David?
Yes, I met him because I was on one of the conversations. I would call it conversations, where he was, and I agree with these things. We all have to be talking. We all have the same challenges, with disputes, and we all need to find ways to resolve it, because if not, things just continue to get worse in our various communities. It is, here in Nigeria, we have all kinds of communal disputes, and it just gets worse sometimes. And when people start talking, we find out that we all have the same needs. We all have the same, we're just all the same. And deep down, we all just want the same thing. It's amazing. Sometimes I've been in mediations where, one party says, oh, I didn't really know the other party was like that. I didn't know he was also like a good person, kind of. But I said, you wouldn't know because you never had the chance to sit down together to talk. And so I think human beings, we all generally want the same thing, but until we all start talking, we're not going to find out. And, one thing I must commend you for is the way you have found the time. I think that one thing that many of us were too busy to do the things sometimes that really matter. And, I really must commend you for finding the time. Like you said, anyone can set up a YouTube channel, but how many people do? Anyone can organize these conversations, but how many people do? We're all too busy. I'm guilty, running around with one thing or the other to give time to things that really matter like this. I really, really want to commend you, because apart from even the cost financially, these things take time. And you've given your time for a great cause. And I hope I'll be able to copy and do the same.
No,
Thank you.
You will do that. And that's the only way this will reach out. We have to reach out as much as we can and wherever we can. Because look, this is the
Yes.
first stage. These are, the way I've looked at it is, first, let's get together all these wonderful people and who share the same thoughts. Now they go out and get similar, I mean, maybe not so many, maybe even more. They bring those people in. And so but one wonderful person gets another wonderful person, and that's how a good network of wonderful people keep. Because I'm very, very selective of the people I bring in, because it's not just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of the people and the good things that they think, the good things that they do. So that is, I think, that little selectivity has to be there. It's not just numbers. I think we need, and I've always also been saying that the people with that mediator mindset who are already out there doing the good work that they're doing, let's get them, as make it a profession for them, and let them, I mean, make money. At some stage they will do larger things, good things for society. So like Ken Cloke says, talks about the role of mediators in social problem solving. But the point is, when they have to only look at feeding themselves, where does a larger role come in? So let's make sure that we talk about that. That's why I talk about the court system. I mean, if someone said ranting and all that. I just feel that the profession is not developing the way it has to develop. And we keep saying it works, everything is good about it. But what about using it and paying money for it and valuing the mediator? So that part of it, I'm very, very sure that we have to start looking at that part. And I mean, there might be people who still feel like Giovanni feels that mandatory mediation, and he talks about that. For me, every time a mediation is done for free, you are affecting my livelihood and other people who want to make mediation the only thing they do, because that's their mindset. They just want to do that, but they can't do it because someone sitting there decided for their self-interest that we need to do it free, or they have to do it free. I mean, we were talking to Jeff Kitchavan yesterday, and exactly the same thing. He said the courts will have to give it free because it is a process you're asking them to do, and not the process that they came in for. So, I mean, those issues which we have discussed also, with part of your conversation, also we were discussing these things. But the $40 for a full mediation in Nigeria in the court system, where does it take mediation? We have to be able to discuss these things and have conversations. I'm going out and saying, I'm saying mediators in the court system, please don't do it at that free level that you are doing it. Please don't do it. You are not going to let the profession develop. Just say no to it. Just think of us. Think of people who are only being mediators. You are doing your practice in the courts. You are arbitrators also. You're doing 50 other things. We are not. We want to make it our only profession. So I'm going out and reaching out to them. I'm saying, please don't do it, even if whatever reason you're doing it for. I mean, you because you like it, you're passionate about it, but you yourself can't take it as a profession because the way it's happening. So those are also things. At the same time, I feel that those conversations also have to happen. So I don't know. Giovanni
It
might have
does
a
because
suggestion.
some
Yeah,
people,
yeah, Lucilla.
and I said it does, those conversations have to happen because some people even bring their high net worth mediations into the court. It comes in through the court system.
Yeah, yeah.
And so even though it's a high net worth mediation, which ideally parties should pay very well for, because they come in through the court system, they also pay, peanuts, $20, $30, $40, $50, and yet they're very high net worth disputes.
No, that's exactly. Yeah, no.
There should be balance.
We watched Jeff's session yesterday. It's exactly what he said. Look, he said, I worked in the court system in the US. He worked in it, and he realized that because that time that he had given, that free time, because half a day he gave for free, the people just wanted to use that half day. They did not come to him for the paid time. So that whole concept, and of course, we went out of that system and he practices only as a mediator. So I'm just saying that we have to develop that part also at the same time. Development of the profession also we have to start discussing, and whatever the hindrances to that also, because I've been saying this and I'll say it again, that if you have to give it for free mediation, why don't you try putting every lawyer into the same situation, that you have to give it for free or $40? You will get $40 if you want to handle a case in the courts. Why don't you do that? Why does that profession have to flourish and mediators should not flourish? What is the reason for that? I mean, why should that inefficient institution of the courts and the judiciary, why should they let this happen to us? I mean, we also have to get together on that. I'm not saying that I'm making a union out there and I'm standing with a flag outside court and I'm telling everyone to do that. But I'm still saying that we need to put it out that I mean, I'm just still saying that people who want to practice it as the only thing they want to do, because I know people who are practicing as lawyers who have the mindset of only wanting to do mediations, and they can't do it. And for that person to get frustrated even for one day because that's not their mindset to be part of litigation, not being able to do that, is that, I don't know, is it called human right violation? I can't say, but but it's not fair on them. So Arisuna, you were saying something.
I mean, I'm just agreeing with you, and I'm just thinking about it, and I'm thinking, what if all the mediators said, okay, we're not mediating again unless you pay properly? I'm thinking, what would happen? You know, and also the for many people, because they're doing a lot of mediation training in a lot of places. So also for some people, these court mediations become a sort of training ground. I'm not sure if you should really use anybody's dispute as a training ground, you know. So all these things, I'm just pondering over them. You know, is it possible to say, I mean, if mediation has really, really grown and gotten a lot of exposure and good raves, then it's possible to say, this is an option in court. You can take it or leave it. If you take it, you're going to pay for it, and you don't have to take it. I'm thinking, how many people will then take it? Can
Absolutely.
the court still encourage mediation that way? Maybe if people really understand that if you took that option and paid for that option, you may not have to pay for the more expensive option of litigation. But I think we still have a lot of work to do then in publicizing and sort of marketing mediation before we can get to the point where when people come to court, they are offered mediation, which they have to pay for. And then they weigh mediation on one hand and the litigation which they have started, and they can say, I think mediation is a better option.
Exactly.
I'm going to leave this litigation I started, or at least I'm going to stay the process and follow mediation and pay for it. Unfortunately, I know many of their lawyers will not even encourage them. The lawyers are happy to keep going to court every day and adjournment for litigation. The lawyers feel that, so in educating, we need to educate the clients and we need to educate the lawyers that you may be better off doing a litigation, ending the matter once and being paid once, than to keep coming for a litigation which could go on for the next 5 years. So there's a lot of educating that needs to be done for us to get to that point.
But also, we also have to look at it from the other perspective. Maybe people are not getting a good user experience from mediation. Why is it that in the US in the last 40, 45 years, still after that 100 million cases are going into courts? Maybe people have not got a good user experience and we keep pushing mediation saying, no, it's very good. Maybe if they haven't got that experience, and if in so many years, look, when I, with someone that I do a mediation for and goes out and tells a lot of people, that tells me that I'm doing something good. But if in so many years that whole chain hasn't happened and people are not going directly to mediators, there may be a fundamental problem in the way that is structured. Maybe who are the people who are becoming mediators? Maybe that whole chain that has been formed and the certifications and all, maybe it's not putting out the right people, because who is the trainer? Who's evaluating? Does that person have the capability of doing it? So maybe the wrong people are in the profession. And how do we blame people for not going to mediators if they haven't even heard someone say that it's a damn good experience? Because I am telling you, finally a profession develops by word of mouth. That's the only way a profession can develop. And if that aspect is missing, we must look at that also. Let's not just keep saying that mediation is the best thing. Finally, is the user getting a good user experience? So I think maybe we should also look at that aspect. I mean, it's not, these are factories which are churning out people, but that's not the way I look at mediation. It's a very, very different concept. And that's why I've been saying that the people who are already have the natural ability because people already trust them, those are the people we have to bring forward. So maybe it'll take time that this whole thing of regulating the profession and talking about a certification, but can this profession be looked at it that way? Who is going to evaluate the way I deal with people? Who's that person? Is the person has that capability, that understanding of how do you individually, one individual's way of dealing with people? How does Giovanni tell me how I should deal with people? I don't deal with him very nicely. You must have seen his sessions. I mute him. I'm not the best person. He doesn't like me, but he tells me, look, he tells me this is the way you are. I have my reasons to do the things I do. Everyone has their ways of going about life and dealing with people. So who is going to tell me that no, you are the one who has that and you are going to be certified? The other person does not. Maybe we're putting the whole process and the whole concept of in choosing who will be mediators. Maybe we're going wrong there also. So I think there are things that a lot of things have to be discussed from both sides. Because finally, for me, everyone talks about the US model, and you've heard me criticize it so many times in the symposium, that dig it deeper. I mean, I just can't understand a population of 300 million, 100 million cases going into courts and mediation being there for 45 years. Some fundamental problem has to be there. And on top of that, community mediation also, people look at the US, 400 community mediation centers, 400,000 matters only. Maybe there's a problem there. It's the way it's being done. So what is all that also I think needs to also be discussed. And I'm sure David has something to say on that. David, you've nodded your head, and I like you nodding your head. So please.
I would like to hear David, because he envisages a basic chain of 160 hours, if I remember well. Because who certifies the mediator? But first of all, who trains and how trains mediator? And I work on this topic from years, and also David did it, and I would really like to hear him how he envisaged a training course, a training period. So please, David.
Yeah.
I think first of all we have to make a distinction between court annexed mediation and mediation that.
I can't hear you. One sec. Yeah. Again.
Okay, I think we have to make a distinction between court annexed mediation and other forms of mediation. I think if I'm thinking about Vikram's vision, Vikram's vision is that people don't go to court. They go to their local mediators and they solve their disputes. In that respect, by the way, I think Kenya has done a fantastic advance in their constitution of 2010. They recognized many traditional mechanisms as part of the legal system. So I think we should be tolerable to local mechanisms outside of the court. But when we're talking about court, I am totally with Giovanni. We're talking about a highly developed profession. We're talking about selecting the right people who are prepared to be mediators. I think Olosula, you mentioned the fact that we use our disputers to train mediators. This is done in the medical profession. That is done by psychologists. It's done by architects.
I just lost you, but yes, I was talking about using disputes to train mediators, which I'm not very sure should be.
Well, as I said, when you unfortunately go to the hospital, you are many times faced with a 24-year-old medical student, and he trains on you, and he will carve your body open. That's the way we train. We train on the job. I mean, the medical student, before being allowed to cut your body, he studied for 4 or 5 years. And this is what Giovanni is after. Before we start, we have to learn a lot. We have to train a lot. We have to do simulations. We have to get theory. We have to know something about economics. We have to know something about psychology. We have to know something about sociology. We have to know something about the law. But then we have to train. And Olosula, we have to train in real disputes and get feedback and learn from our mistakes. And yes, sometimes the people who get to mediate by trainees, they don't get the best service. A way around it is to have trainees work with an experienced mediator, to co-mediate with an experienced mediator who holds the reins of this mediation. So I'm saying again, we have to make a difference between court-annexed mediations, where we compete with the lawyers and we compete with the judges. By the way, yes, the judges give their service to the people, and the people don't pay the judge, but the state pays the judge. And maybe in courts, the state can pay the mediator because he is replacing the judge. He is solving the dispute. So I think there are many ways to think about how to compensate a good mediator. I'm totally, Vikram, in favor of private mediation. I make a living by mediating. And but I think when it comes to the court, maybe the court should be paying the mediator the same salary it pays to the judge. They do the same service to the public. Yes, Giovanni.
Oh no,
You're
Giovanni.
not.
Giovanni always comes in after that. Giovanni, I'll go. I'll tell you, the problem that you are, what you are talking about is because everyone thinks that every profession has to go in the same way. Like you were speaking about the medical profession. I am on the other end, totally on the other end, because in terms of surgery, it is not something which a person who is, say, even sitting in a village, is not doing surgery, right? But he's doing, someone there is actually working as a mediator. So there is a natural ability, because this is people to people. I can't teach this. I can't teach this. It comes as a natural ability. Some people in a family, in a community are trusted. Why are they trusted? Because there is some natural ability they have, and they're doing it right from when they are children. There are some people in a friend of a certain group of friends who are looked at as the people who are going to help them resolve the dispute. They don't look at them to do surgery on them. They don't. It is because this is something, a person to person thing. These people know how to do it, and they know it better than anyone else who can give them training. And you ask them, they will tell you everything about the process that you are told in any training. They know it themselves. We are wasting our time trying to go through this route, while we have this group and this whole pool of people out there which we are not tapping, because we have been given this concept that this, whatever number of hours you might say, that this will change things. People will become something else. If that could happen, that's the only thing that is required in this world. Only forget schools, colleges for the moment. Just give them 40-hour training, what you call, and this will be a peaceful world. They'll solve everyone's problems. It's not happening. It's never going to happen, because it doesn't happen that way. It is such a natural ability, and only some people have it. That is why in the traditional system, everywhere, there are only some people that people go to. For other reasons, like you said, maybe wealth, social status, people go for that. But that's the way society is structured. Why is it that they are accepted in a certain way? That part of it, that's how the community has put them up, whatever reasons for that are. And if they are wealthy and people look at the wealth as being an indicator of someone we should listen to, well, we can't say why should we stop them? That's the way they look at it. And if someone wants to resolve the dispute by paying them, let them do it. We should not, these are all things which are happening and will happen. What we are going out and doing is, we are saying, no, we will create. We don't create. We can't create. If we could create, this would be the most peaceful world. I don't know if there's another world somewhere else where it's worse, but here there is so much that is happening which we read about. I don't read the news, so I don't know exactly what all is happening in terms of conflicts in this world, but I'm sure there are lots of them. But 40-hour training is all that we had to give right from school. Nothing else. Come, we will give you 40-hour training. Now you will go and make this a peaceful world. It didn't happen. It won't happen. Let's not fool ourselves on that. So I think that part of it, we are going totally wrong somewhere on that. And the court system, I'm very clear. The courts were formed for a certain purpose, which was, we call it dispensing justice. Why they were formed, the colonization aspect, do we need them? Do we have to start relooking them? That part of it is what we need to discuss. Even the procedure, civil procedure, I think Tat Lim from Singapore was talking about. Singapore's looking at totally revamping that concept. Let's look at that. If there's some paper already published or some draft, let's look at that, because someone has to question that aspect. That why does it exist? Does it have to exist in this way? Because someone gave it to us for their own selfish purpose. They wanted to exploit a colony, so they gave us this structure. And then after that, we took it from there and kept it. Like I've been repeating and I will keep repeating, our civil procedure code is 1908, when the British were ruling us. We have not changed it because it serves someone's purpose to not change it. Backlog of 43 million cases, but we don't want to question that. But we want to get into mediation. We want to tell people that's the route you have to take. We will push you in that direction. No, you were formed for a certain purpose. You can't form that. You can't serve that purpose. Break it up. Forget about it. Just give it up if it's not working. If someone has to sit in a jail, an innocent person has to sit in jail, like I keep saying, even for 1 hour, and you can't give him justice, it's a problem somewhere. This is not a colony. You can't take away someone's rights. You have no reason to do it. You get 100,000 judges. You get 500,000. Fund it if you have to. But why fund a mediator? Let him be out there doing their work. If you say we are funding people's disputes, why should we fund their disputes? Why should the taxpayer be paying for funding someone's dispute and help them resolve their disputes? Pay for that. They will pay for it. And if someone can't pay for it, we have legal aid in our courts. If so, we feel that, yes, there is some requirement to help poor people resolve their disputes with a mediator, let's look at that aspect maybe separately. But here to give it free to everyone, like Olusala is saying, these are matters where people are fighting about maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they want to get a mediator for free. There's a fundamental problem where it's pushed, and court cannot tell someone to pay for mediation. So it will have to be free. That's the best part. And that's the interesting part, because you were formed for a certain purpose under a constitution, and you have to do that, and a person should not have to pay for an additional process only because you can't do your job. It's because I keep saying that the foundation behind this is wrong. The foundation is that there are two different methods of resolving disputes. The colonization aspect, that the courts are the only place you look for dispute resolution. I'm saying that it'll take only 1 day to change everything. You come to a court, like they have the multi-door courthouse in Lagos. You have a multi-door courthouse. Here there's a litigation center, mediation center, arbitration center. Everyone gets the same amount. They can't charge anything more than that. $40. That's it. A lawyer can only charge $40 for a case. An arbitrator can only charge $40 for a matter that comes to an. Mediator can only charge $40. Nothing else you can charge. Let us see how the legal profession talks about it. They'll come on the streets. Just because mediators don't come on the streets and they keep doing it, what about the same thing that applies to mediators applies to the lawyers? Everything applies to them. If you say that they have to be trained on the job, everyone has to be trained on the job. Let them come in. It's just that the way it has been structured, for some reason, the legal profession, because it's the way it is structured, they will get away with it. They have their groups that they will talk about it. Just let them do it for 1 day. Let the governments announce, this is it. Everyone gets the same. No, you can't charge anything more. The mediation centers will be closed down on that day everywhere. So I think maybe we are getting it wrong, and you hear me talking so passionately about it. Maybe you don't like it, but I am so serious about this thing, because I'm just seeing that the profession is going to be finished. It's being throttled. And anyone who's surviving in the profession as only being a mediator, we just put the numbers down, and you'll find out how rare that is. And Constantia from Brazil, it's sad to hear that someone says, I hope in my lifetime I can practice only as a mediator. Imagine someone saying that kind of thing, wants to do it. That's definitely in my lifetime. If I see it, I'll be happy. We're getting it, I think, totally wrong. Whatever the Italian concept of, yes, mandatory mediation is working. Whom is it working for? The courts. Yes, we have been able to reduce our backlog. Who cares? Why can't you bring in more judges if you have to? Backlog is the reason you want to go out for mediation. I mean, it's strange. It is. You have to dispense justice. And Chuck, who's from Israel, who's in Germany, gave those statistics that Germany, the mediation is not there because the courts are efficient. So Finish off mediation if people don't need it, if it's not something that the user experience is good and they don't want to go for mediation. And if the courts become efficient, forget mediation, let's finish it off. No, it doesn't work if it's not working for people. Give people justice in the courts, but in 1 hour an innocent person should be outside. You should not be keeping him for 1 hour is also too much. Because colonization has given you that whole concept that we are up there, we can do what we can take away your freedom when we want. I think we have to go beyond that. Yes, Giovanni, please, now you can, if you could.
The former ambassador from Germany told us that in Germany, the court make a decision in 4 months' time. Well, if you have a very efficient court system, the use of mediation is one kind. If you have not very working court system, the situation, the approach to mediation is completely different. I'll send you the data about the Italian mediation and my analysis of them, and you realize that it was just thanks to the compulsory pre-court mediation that mediation started to be used in Italy. Before, no people used it and no people studied it. That's all. Another thing, also, what I heard from other speakers in this symposium is very rare that one professional is supported just only by his profession in mediation. Usually, mediation is something that is added to the real profession. And I come back to my first underline. We must know different situations in different countries, not only culture, but also the economic situation and how the court system reacts and works. That's all. Later on, we can speak of mediation applied to that situation. David, what do you think about it?
But this is exactly what I said. Yeah, David.
I think we're ignoring something very important, and maybe the next symposium should deal with that. People have a misconcept of the court. For I think 2 or 3 decades, maybe even more, the courts do not function the way that the people expect them to function. You come to court and you expect justice. You come to court and you expect a ruling, but statistics show that when you come to court, you have maybe 5% a chance of getting a ruling. Most cases are finished by settlement and in the civil court. And in criminal, most cases are finished by plea bargaining. And actually, I think one of the things that mediators can do is to expose the public to this terrible news. The courts are not doing what we think they should do. The judges do not rule. And when you come to court, the judge is not measured by the quality of his rulings. He's measured by the speed in which he deals with cases. And it's a machine of settlements and of plea bargaining. So I think people have an illusion when they go to court. And I think maybe the next symposium should show people that when you go to court, you don't get what you expected. You don't get a ruling. You are forced to settle, to compromise. And if you are in a criminal court, you will be encouraged to admit something minor, and then you get a better sentence by the judge. Judges are not making judgments anymore. They're handling cases. I think that's something that we have ignored during this symposium.
I'll tell you, David, let me show you what Giovanni started with. Let's see his paper. Let's just read this part. If we assume that the judgments are from here, he said that in his presentation, and this is from 1741. This issue has been there. Everyone's understood this, but we still let that system continue. Have you read this?
Yeah.
So, so what you're saying is not something new. This is something people have been saying. What did we do about it? It's not that we understood that. And on the other end, he spoke about the village peacemaker. This part, isn't it? One sec.
But your Vikram, your romantic village peacemaker usually doesn't mediate.
Yeah.
He does other things. He does a beautiful job. He is respected within his community. He has his personal talents. He has his charisma. But usually he does not mediate. He arbitrates. He rules. He gives suggestions. He offers solutions. He enforces solutions. I think when you talk about this fantastic 40-hour training, I think that's one of our sicknesses, one of our illnesses, that we think that with 40 hours, anybody can turn into a mediator. And it's wrong. You have to, mediation is a culture. It's not a technique. You have to learn, you have to understand, you have to sympathize with it. You have to adopt the values of mediation. The fact that many people in the villages and the communities are fantastic dispute resolvers doesn't say that they are mediators. They are not mediators. They exert their authority. They have influence. The people don't want to mess with them. People have respect to them. They obey what they say. This is not mediation, Vikram.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is why I've been saying what work that James is doing. He's actually going out and telling them that. That's exactly what he's telling them. And
Fantastic.
if they themselves want to stay relevant, they'll have to change. If that, look, people are going to walk away from those communities. These are not those times that you can hold people in those communities. Some of them maybe you still can. Olusula may be able to tell us in Nigeria if the people might not have a choice to get out of those. So those are other aspects of what is happening in a country. So I'm not saying that we are saying that, I'm saying that that whole system is all right. I'm not saying that. That's why am I being, I've been everywhere you see in the symposium, I've been talking about you and what James is doing. Why do I keep saying that? Only because you've come out with a model which in some way has looked at the present situation and you found it not fitting into what you would think is the way that dispute resolution should happen. Forget the mediation part of it. Just the fact that you can force someone, then it's just the way like any court does. You give them the order, you have to just follow it. So I'm totally with you on that. So that is what I'm saying, that that's why we are discussing these things, that whatever the traditional system is, the issues in that, we must talk about it. But the fact is that within communities, are people trusted? First of all, let's find out that are they trusted? Maybe the trust is gone in some communities. Maybe people don't trust anyone these days. So that is why a third person to give a decision has come in, because the whole psyche. Look, why I keep talking about colonization is because that divide and rule that was put into societies, which still exists, because that seed was put at some point of time, and that might have existed before that also. I'm not a person who's got into history. Like I said, I don't read books, so I don't even know what's happening. So that part, that seed is there of divide and rule. So if that division between societies is there and they don't even trust each other, that psyche itself, to change it, should be what some people should be looking at. I'm not looking at it. For me, it is my dispute resolution revolution. And I don't even talk about conflict resolution. I'm saying to right now at the first stage, the quantifiable part. That's why I said dispute resolution. I said the quantifiable part, let people get a benefit of mediation and see it. Okay, this was the dispute I got. I keep, some people say, oh, conflict dispute, same thing. No, for me, if I'm talking about it, is the quantifiable. Okay, now dispute taken care of, maybe the conflict not taken care of. But if dispute goes out, whether you want to manage the conflict, some people don't want to. They just want to finish the dispute and walk off. That's their decision. That's it. So conflict management and all that, other people are doing a lot of work on that, and definitely, I'm sure they're doing a good job on that. But I'm just saying that let people benefit, take the benefit, and see the advantages of mediation. Maybe that's not happening. That's what I'm saying. If the user experience is not there, why do we keep pushing mediation? Why should we keep telling them you must try the process? If it is not working for it, I told you 40, 45 years, if that network of people is not there, that people are going out and saying, no, no, we must go there. This court lawyer telling us to go to court. No, we don't want to go to court. We want to use this process. We don't even want to see a lawyer. That's not happening there in so many years. So that is the structure of the society, and very easily litigious society. We're a litigious society. Even Israel, Chuck says, is a litigious society. I mean, it's a litigious society because maybe that option is not there. Or is it because we can't change the people? If that we can't change the people, then that courts will exist, those decisions will happen, all that system will continue. So I think maybe that's a discussion is more into other areas also. It is not just this part, but for me, going back to that traditional thing, I'm not saying, look, for the moment, I'm not saying the traditional, as in you were saying that this person exists in that structure as a rabbi or whatever. I'm not even talking about that. I am saying that there are families, there are communities which have identified people as people who, whatever traits they can put on them, but they trust them to resolve their disputes. And I'm starting at the school. I'm saying those children are there, they exist, they have everything going for them. Let's pick them up. Takes 5 years, 10 years. We will be able to get a whole number of them into society everywhere. In like, what is community? These are all children who have grown up. They're not dropped from Mars, that they become that at a certain age you come in, you start as a child in that. So if that whole culture of mediation has to be developed, let's start from there. That the person who has that natural ability, there the person might not have what you're saying, the authority to push a decision on them, except that people don't understand in that system also. I hear peer mediation being discussed in a certain manner, that there is an involvement of maybe the teachers also in that. I'm saying, no, just remove everyone of authority from that system. Let it be only them resolving the disputes themselves. And that person of authority is not their part of that system. And even the child doesn't have that authority. It's not that you have appointed that person as a prefect or monitor, whatever words they use in every school, they might be different. But you put a person of authority, no, that person of authority moves out. Now it's only people working together to resolve the disputes. That culture, that psyche of colonization, that a person of authority has to exist somewhere, that part of it has to start from that age. Because the people who already been conditioned in that system to change that will take time. People who are not. So our schools, even in, are people willing to give up control? I think that is the starting point. Does someone in every system want control? Be it a principal of a school, a teacher. In communities, there are community leaders. Do they just want control? And that's the way society is functioning. So how do you break that? I don't know. I mean, I'm just giving my thoughts out. If there's something that David wants to put in that, because Giovanni is likes the control, he likes that authority figure, the court system and everything. So I don't know. Yeah.
Many times you told the word colonization, decolonization. This is an experience we didn't have in Italy. What should be the influence of colonization, decolonization on the use of mediation? Was it used much more during the colonization period or much more after?
The way I see it, that the colonization, the whole concept was to destroy anything that existed. So dispute resolution was one part of it. There were so many other aspects of it. Could be the way people were educated, what that traditional knowledge was, or all that, everything maybe you have to break everything down. Only then can you rule. I told you the number of people ruling the population that we had. I mean, how do you do it? You don't let them exist with their systems. You push your systems in it. I mean, that's the way I understand it. Otherwise, how do you do it? If everyone is happy doing what they want, what role do you play? So you have to be able to come in somewhere. So I think that part of it needs to be, of course, discussed. I mean, that might be the root of the problem. But within communities in general, as people, we are a certain type. Like I said, we don't want to live in communities. We are just forced to live in communities. We just want to close our doors and live behind that. That's it. Then why are maybe I'm going wrong in this whole community aspect totally. Why then this whole concept of community doesn't exist? People are not naturally into that maybe. I mean, those are again, okay, of course, a lot of larger, I mean, the people I'm sure working on that part. For me, on the dispute resolution side, I am just saying that from our side, if there is a concept of a natural ability and there are people who are doing it, and it's a natural thing for people to want to resolve disputes in a collaborative manner, the starting point might be the children in school. Maybe let's have a, without that point when authority figures have started coming in, because authority figures will actually be there in everywhere. Schools also, they will exist. They feel that they are the right people to tell children what to do and how to do it. We are conditioning them. It's also not correct. They do not come out as individuals. They come out as into a box that has been created for them. So does the education system also needs to be questioned, like the court system has to be questioned? What education system were we given? And why are we conditioning people in that system? Do we have to break that also, open that out also? I think there are a lot of questions that, and dispute resolution for us is the for what we are discussing. But the effect on dispute resolution doesn't happen only that. It's not in isolation. If mediation we're talking about, we're not talking about it in isolation. That everything else affects it, and we should be talking about it. And how, if we have to undo certain things, then we have to start conversations on undoing that. If we are effective, look, finally it is that we want to help people resolve the disputes. That is what we want to do. If something is restraining us, if someone is tying our hands, shouldn't we want to open that? Or should we say, no, this person is tying our hands, oh, we can't do anything, that's the way it is, and we have to accept it? Why? We'll question it. If it's something that is part of our DNA, we think that it works for us and we can make it work for people, why should we not be vocal about it? We are not there to just sit there and accept what is happening. Maybe it's me, I'm talking about it. Maybe you don't have to share the same thing. You don't have to. I'm not saying that I'm trying to push that concept to you, but I'm just putting out the fact that it's not dispute resolution in isolation or mediation in isolation. The entire structure needs to be discussed. And that part of it, whether David is going to organize a symposium on it or how he's going to do about it. So just do it, David. Please just organize it. I'm there. I will. You know me. I can do it. I mean, put people together. But I want that 50 topics should be discussed in 50 different places, and 100 people in each of them is nothing. You can do 200. Tens of thousands of people should be discussing these things in every corner of the world if we have to change things. And those conversations I don't see them happening. It's a very limited conversation. Okay, which certification accreditation needs to be done, and which court system is going to do mandatory, which is going to do this? How are we going to push this whole concept of court annex mediation? Largely, I see discussions on that only. Traditional system, how many in all the 93 people that are there, how many on strengthening the traditional system came out? Only a few. So because that's the way another structure is developing on mediation. And if the court system was in dispute resolution in terms of litigation, I think in mediation also a certain thing is developing. Some institutions creating a certain thing that this is the right way to do it. These are the right people who will do your mediation. This is the certification accreditation required. Doesn't seem to work. Andrew Miller talking about UK. I mean, everyone's got that accreditation certification, 18,000 of them out there. If they're not being used, either they're not doing a good job, or maybe people are not aware. Whatever is the question, why are people not aware? Are they not? Are these people not part of that society? Why are not people going to them naturally? So I think that I think there are a lot of factors there. But maybe I'm having a conversation and wanting these conversations. Maybe right now people are not talking about it. They're stuck in a certain system and that box, and that's what is being pushed. But luckily, we have such a large community, large population, which is not touched by all this. It's not touched by accreditations and certification. They don't even know about it. And I don't educate anyone. I don't tell people, look, you need to look at this qualification or this accreditation. Never. I am be educating them on that. I don't want to educate them. For me, that whole concept is a wrong structure being made for a profession which is so different. It's a very different profession. I think people don't understand it. That's why maybe it's not taking off the way it should have taken off. Otherwise, people should be rushing. The mediators should be the only people who should be the ones who people go to, and they should be like earning money like anything, because they're resolving someone's dispute. Yeah, Giovanni.
Vikram, how you trained in mediation? Did you train which were the results, the reactions to your thought?
Luckily, I did not get trained. Luckily, there was a point which I almost fell for that. I said I should formalize it, the qualification, these training and all, I should do it. So I actually went to one of these institutions. Luckily, this was only now. This is the only time I said this was end of 2019. I said, let us formalize it, because it's part of my practice. I was already doing it. But I said, let's formalize this whole formal structure I should be a part of. So I went there. Luckily, pandemic happened. Luckily, they said we are not having anything right now. Then after a few months, there was another institution I had written to, and they have this whole setup with various people around the world, and you get qualified here or you get into that panel and all that. That I had written to them. I got to get an email one day before that training is started, that this 5-day training is starting. Obviously, that one day before you can't do it. So I said, send me a mail next time in advance. Luckily, nothing came from them. I mean, today, if I can say that, please, this whole training concept, please stay away from it, is because I stayed away from it. So it's not that I did it, so I am there. On the court system, I criticize the whole concept within the court system. I am on the panel of there is a Government of India, Ministry of Corporate Affairs panel. I'm on it, so that only because I should be able to say I'm not an outsider talking about it. I can be an insider, but I don't want to be part of it. I don't want this to be pushed. Let it be private mediation, as we call it. We have the law available to us in this country. The best law, I keep saying, best law in the world. People are still confusing this concept that should be a mediation law. First of all, our conciliation is a mediation law. That is the way mediation is. That's the way, luckily, it's defined today, because of the fact that we are signatories to a certain convention where in principle, we've accepted that definition. Luckily, all that has happened. Today, I can show a definition. Yesterday, there was nothing. There was no definition. Everyone was confusing people, mediation, conciliation, this, that, and the other. I'm saying, luckily, we have that today. So we have a law on mediation. We have mediation and conciliation, 2 words used. Both of them are required. I keep telling people, don't get confused. One is a process which has nothing to it. You can do it the way you want to do it. And at the end of that, you get a contract. You need that. And that can be a verbal contract, that because people are going to be there resolving their disputes on their own. And at the end of that, people will ask someone to come in, and there will be verbal agreements done. This world has survived on verbal agreements, and people want to push a written settlement agreement, and it goes to court and this, that in some jurisdictions. No, people are going to be informally getting people involved to resolve their disputes. There will be verbal agreements. The way trade happens, the same way dispute resolution happens. So you need that word mediation. Do it the way you want, get a contract, enforceable as a contract. Luckily, we have another process called conciliation. You follow that procedure laid out there, standards are there, everything is protected that you want protected. So I am saying that you have confidentiality protected without prejudice. It is without prejudice. The mediator not called in as a witness. The whole concept of how that whole process has to happen, what standards for the mediator, everything is there. At the end of that settlement agreement is as good as a court decree, because it goes to the root of being a consent award, arbitral award. I am saying now, with the new model law that UNCITRAL has put out, that settlement agreement can directly be a court decree. It doesn't have to go through the route of the arbitral award. All the criteria, because court can't be forced to enforce anything. So from there, they need some criteria not to enforce it. Today, in our conciliation, the criteria stands in a section of the arbitration portion, which is on why should that arbitral award not be enforced. So that criteria is there. Today, if you want to tweak this only to the extent that the settlement agreement is a court decree, this is the criteria for why the court can refuse enforcement of that court decree. So the execution will not happen for these reasons. One of them, I mean, you have the look at the Singapore Convention, look at the UNCITRAL model law, everything is written down there. So that is a little tweaking that has to happen, but don't change the entire concept if your lack of understanding of it or whatever the reasons are there vested interest, self-interest, what all is happening. So that's the way I look at it. Yeah, Giovanni.
David, please start an international mediation classroom. Okay.
I'm saying no classroom. I'm starting, Giovanni. I don't know. Achha, I didn't tell you. I was going to announce it today in the evening. I'm starting a lecture series from October. The first lecture is by Ken Cloke on 6th of October. It is going to be about the basics. First, let's just put out the basics of mediation. And I want people, what did Ken Cloke say? I don't know whether you've been able to watch the first episode or whichever episode of Evolution of a Mediator that I did. He said, look, there was a training which was happening. He was a judge in the court.
But I hope to make this experience face to face and not through Zoom or through to the personal computer. Yeah, it's a completely different taste.
No. What I'm saying is that the fact that he went to a training and said, this is what I want to do. So I said, why not put it out on the YouTube channel? Everyone can watch it for free. Let them get inspired or understand, yes, this is what they want to do. So why should they have to find out? Because look, we're a huge world. Ourselves, we are a huge country. People are never ever going to be exposed to that training, whatever you call it, 40R or whatever you call it. There are, first of all, who are those trainers? Are they certified? Who? It's not easy. You can't just put anyone there. So I said, let's let the best in the world talk about it. So that lecture series starts. So everyone has access to it. So if they can relate to it and say, oh, yes, this is what I want to do, we'll push this out. All of you have to push it out. I mean, it's not that I can only put it out. From there, if you share it with people, not just through LinkedIn and Facebook are not the only places. Send it out on WhatsApp. Let people watch these things. I don't know whether that activity is happening at the back. I don't know whether people are sharing these things that I put out. But share it out. Let people see these. So that starts from the 6th of October. So the lecture series starts. Then that other thing about talking books, there is another series which is starting that again, Ken Cloke starts that. That's on the 21st of October. That's his book. We're talking about one of his books. Then 23rd is Michael Lang's book. So the concept is that the author, because I don't read books, and the byline is that talking books because some of us don't read them. So that is the author. We talk to the author, what their concept behind the book is. Some people who've read the book can tell me this, I've read the book, I want to be part of the discussion. I'll call them into that discussion. So we are just talking about the book. I'm going to understand what the book is about, so I don't have to read it. So my eyes are all right. I don't have to wear glasses. So that is my selfish interest in that. So I don't want to read them, but all these good people have written good things. So we take that series forward. So that's how things are planned. Yep. So anything else that you people want to put across from your learning? Anything from all these so many things? Why don't you have a look at the list on my website and see each of the people who gave a session and anything that you want to point out from their sessions?
I will have to sign off in a few minutes. So I think I can't conclude my participation without again expressing admiration to the project that you took upon yourself, and the way that you.
When did you say your trip?
Sorry.
Also, let me just get you in a minute. David is saying some nice things about me. I want to hear them.
No, I think you took upon yourself a real mission. I can see the drive behind it. It's really something to admire. And yes, I'm expecting to see a continuation of this. And if I can be part, I'll be honored.
You are going to be part of it. That lecture series is for people who have these good thoughts about things, and also you are going to be part of that. So we'll fix up a lecture. I am doing it on Wednesdays. Just one sec, also one sec. So basically, this is going to be
at a time when we can all join.
Your voice is breaking.
Okay, I'm getting ready to go to work.
No, your voice is breaking.
Yes, I don't know. Even yours is breaking.
Yeah, so I think that's your signal. Yeah, signal is a problem. It's showing a signal in red here.
We'll all be able to attend the academy. Yes.
But
Oh, shame. Anyway, we'll continue the conversation. We will
yeah,
continue
we're
the
having this, we're
conversation.
continuing this conversation at 5:30 India time. So please go to a place where the signal is better and please be part of the conversation. At
What
5,
is the plan? What is your plan for 5:30?
same thing. It's the same thing. Look, the thing is that some people, obviously the time difference issue is there. So definitely they can't be part of the 11 to 1. That's how the sessions were also structured, because people in some places, for them that part time is not all right. So
Right.
and some people it's all right. So that's why the way it happened. So people from, say, Asia, this part of Asia, and I mean, you, for you also the time at this time was all right, but for the US, it obviously doesn't work. Brazil, I mean, South America, it doesn't work. So that's why those people can come in on that discussion later. But you're also most welcome. Everyone is welcome for that one. It's not that there is some division, only the people from
Yeah, of course.
so it's not that. So please, it might be the same conversation, might be, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's okay. Because the thing is, finally, people have to listen to it at some stage. So if there are two of those videos out, maybe they might watch one of them. So, and okay, they will be, you will hear from me the same thoughts that I've been repeating throughout the symposium, because I have one interest, that one individual whose mindset today is that I want to be a mediator. I want that person to be practicing only as a mediator. That's
Right.
my total focus. Because once that person is able to practice only as a mediator and earns money out of it, there's a larger role for that person in society. So that person should have time for that also. And one portion has to be on promoting mediation and mediators and getting them into the cycle, which is what I've been saying, my 1,000 get 1,000. We have 1,000,000 people out there. So that's another thing that I'm wanting to put out. So that's how I'm looking at it. So we can actually, I mean, if there's something people have, there's something to be said, we can always conclude the session now. It's not that if it was for 1 o'clock, we have to do it up till then. So if any final words, David, before you want to leave, is there something you want to say here, or you want to say it in the evening?
I just, again, I express my thanks and gratitude and admiration to this amazing project that you put together, and all the fantastic people that you managed to gather to get their cooperation. If you talk about the personal abilities that are a requirement, you have them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And everyone is going to duplicate what I do. If I say, you'll do it better. And let's just be out there and having conversations, which is what I do. Just have conversations. So thank you very much. So
I never thought that something like I shared was really possible and feasible. Best compliment to Vikram, because for his passion, for his ability, and for his burning. Thanks a lot.
But the main thing, Giovanni, what I really liked was that you understood the entire situation. Although I said put your questions and comments in the chat, you still were there. You listened to the whole thing, because look, you had to understand my limitation. Initially, when I had thought of the symposium, I thought everyone will be given 1.5 hours, 90 minutes, what I wanted to give people. But because there was this tremendous response, I had to cut it down to 1 hour. I know 1 hour is nothing. I mean, tell you, in terms of discussions, definitely you need more time. But because there were so many people, you can understand from my perspective, if I had to do from 1 hour to 1.5 hours, that whole, first of all, either I would have had to spend the whole day, or I would have had to cut down on people, or I'd had to continue it for a few months more. But you can understand that my golf has got affected. The last 2 months, I have not been able to play much. Very few times I could go. Because look, you have to handle everything. You have to design those posters that go out. You have to do social media, coordinate between people. It's a lot of activity there. So my golf has got affected. And if I'd had to go from 2 to 3 months, you don't know what would have happened. So at some point I had to cut it also. Because the weather is, look, luckily what happened was in Delhi, the weather in August, September, very hot and humid. So not so bad. I could stay away from golf. But now the weather is going to become very nice from October onwards. So now I did not want to extend the symposium into October. So that's how it is. So that's how, I mean, that's the way things happened for me. It was very nice of you to be able to sit there, even though you did not get a role most of the time to ask your questions. So that was very nice of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Best.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vikram. And Vikram, I hope that when all these things really come to pass, then I will be mediating only and I will not need to go to work as I have to go now. Now I have to go to work.
That's
But
exactly what I'm doing
looking
it for,
forward to the
Olusula.
time.
This is exactly what I'm
I
doing it
know, I
for.
know.
People like you who,
I agree with you.
yeah, the,
Yes, exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's not
I'm
just you,
looking
Olusula,
forward
but
to that time.
I hear this from people all over the world, and it's I feel so sad about it, that they have everything going for them. It is just the way the whole thing has been structured around it. The profession has not been pushed properly. It's been pushed like
Exactly.
in the institutional system, and like I said, the certification, the accreditation system. But what about the other people who just want to do a good thing, want to help people resolve their disputes? So exactly what you're saying.
Mhm. Thank you very much.
So I'll see you if you want to
Thanks for
drop in.
giving your time.
Just drop in the evening also if you have time. But please, if you just
Okay.
go to a place when we did that your session, the signal was good at that
Okay.
time. If you go to the same place that you did that session from,
Yes, I will.
yeah, we'll do there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Alasura.
very good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you. See you. Bye. So I'll end the
Bye-bye.
session here,
Bye.
and we'll see you in the evening. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Giovanni.
Yeah.
Bye, Alasura.